Again, welcome to our Careers in STEM seminar hosted by CSTEM. If you just logged in, my name is Annika.
And my name is Dalia. So for all of you that are new here, as a reminder to those who aren't, CSTEM is a nonprofit kind of student-led STEM outreach seminar series, and we aim to connect classroom curriculum to real-life careers by introducing you all to the various professions in the STEM field, and we hope to encourage many or all of you to pursue careers in STEM in the future.
So during the seminar, we have invited two very accomplished professionals in research and development. We will start with a short presentation and continue with a Q&A. So through the presentation, we hope you learn more about their job responsibilities, educational background, and useful advice you may take with you on your pursuit of similar STEM careers. If you missed the seminar or part of it, it will be recorded and available on YouTube. So stay tuned for that update on our Instagram, or fill out the link in the chat to join our emailing list. So go ahead, Delia.
So our first guest speaker is Miss Abby Case. Miss Abby Case is a mechanical engineer who has worked in manufacturing and product development for 20 years with Georgia Pacific, making household paper products. Currently, she is the director of product development there, and she graduated from Auburn University with her undergrad and received a Master's of Science in Project Management from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. She has developed skills in project engineering, risk assessment, and product development. Let us welcome Ms. Case.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to speak with you guys today. So as Delia and Annika said, I am currently a director of product development for Georgia Pacific in our consumer products goods. So specifically, what I like to tell everyone is I make toilet paper for a living. So I'm sure you all have utilized my product, used it, probably use it hopefully every day. And it's a surprisingly interesting product to work on that you may not realize how complicated or exciting it is. But I really wanted to talk to you guys today about what is my journey within STEM? Why did I pick STEM? What do I find interesting in this career and field in hopes to inspire you all? So my role today is really to lead a team of individuals to design and develop new products. So what does that mean? So I always think of R&D as two sides to the same coin. You've got the research side, right? Asking the big questions, trying to push the envelope on technology, trying to dig into the why. Why is this working? Why is this doing what we need it to do? How can I make this thing better or change the technology to make this thing better? I work on the development side, which is what I like to think about as the application of all that technology, right? So my role and my team's role is to really understand what are those consumer needs, right? What do people want in the world? Most certainly with their toilet paper, because that's my responsibility, but it really applies to any kind of development process, right? You ask, can this be better? What are people needing? What are maybe they having to struggle with, right? We talk about compensating behaviors. Those are behaviors that people are working around because the product or the solution isn't working for them. And we really need to understand that consumer really deeply to then start to ask ourselves, how can I make this better, right? What can I do with the technology in my disposal to make this better for the consumer? And the interesting thing is, even with something as simple as toilet paper, not all consumers are the same, right? So it's my role to understand for that particular consumer, right? We have products where some consumers just want a basic toilet paper and they really want a lot of value for their money. So it's not about making the best thing, it's about making the right thing for what that consumer wants. And then I have consumers who are absolutely looking for the best, and we're always pushing the envelope to make the toilet paper softer or thicker or stronger, depending on what that consumer wants. And that's really what I do in product development. It's about connecting to that consumer need, understanding our technologies that we have today and the technologies our technology partners are developing for the future, and then delivering that to the market in the product format that I am tasked with creating. So again, it's toilet paper, but you'd be amazed how much science goes into it. So I've actually worked with Georgia Pacific for 20 years. I started straight out of college with a mechanical engineering degree. So why mechanical engineering, right? Like what fascinated about me? And I will tell you, I am not a car person. You know, I think you talk to a lot of mechanical engineers and they'll say, oh, I love cars, right? Or I love tinkering. Absolutely. I'm a tinker. I love tinkering with things, but I'm not a car person. What fascinates me about mechanical engineering is the physics behind it, right? I'm a very visual person. I like seeing things in real life. Mechanical engineering is about getting your hands in there and seeing the thing in 3D or 3D. So to me, when I was trying to understand what engineering field do I want to go into, that's the one that resonated with me, right? I have the utmost respect for people who understand chemistry, right? Or electrical engineering or other science fields that don't resonate with me because my interests don't lie there. But I love mechanical engineering. It allowed me to then get a job with Georgia Pacific, actually working in our manufacturing site to start with. There's nothing better than learning a product than seeing how it's made day in and day out, right? I'm sure many of you have seen the How It's Made series. It's a great series. We actually do have one on toilet paper too, if you ever could look at it. But I love seeing something being made in real time. I love the manufacturing facilities because it's very hands-on, it's very real, and you get to see an immediate impact. And I really enjoyed my journey in manufacturing because I really got to understand how the product is made and the process we use, which is very complicated when it comes to paper. So tissue paper, so things like toilet paper, paper towels, napkins, is actually the most complicated of all the paper sciences. For instance, if you think about softness in toilet paper, right? Everyone wants a softer toilet paper. Well, there's actually 72 variables in our paper making process that go into making something soft. You change any one of those variables and it'll change the characteristic of the paper. So just imagine that and now multiply it. That's just one part of the process, right? So now multiply it and you can imagine how cool it is. Paper machines are also surprisingly large to most people. So I always like to explain a paper machine is actually the size of a football field, 3 stories high, and typically it's running around 6,000 feet per minute. So the dynamics, the physics, are all very interesting to me when you look at how we actually get something that starts out as a very liquid form and turn it into a very solid form at the end. So had a lot of great experience working in manufacturing, but as many people do in their career, and you will find in your career, you get to a point where you're comfortable and you're looking for the next challenge, right? What am I going to do next? Where should I take this? And for me, because of what I'm passionate and interested in and the way my brain works, I wanted to try something completely different. I like challenges. I like seeing what I can do. So I took a leap and went into research and development after about 4 years in manufacturing. And I actually started with our device team. So if you go into a bathroom in your school, somebody had to design the paper towel dispenser, the toilet paper dispenser. Well, we at Georgia Pacific do that internally. So in our research team, we had devices. So I joined that team, and it sounds odd, right? Like you go from manufacturing where you're just making the product day in and day out. I know everything about the product and the tissue, but now I got to go learn about this like hard thing, right? It's made out of plastic and we make it differently. Well, what I discovered very quickly is a dispenser is just a mini converting line. So I was able to take a lot of my knowledge and transfer it, but still learning a new type of engineering. Right now I'm doing the upfront stuff. Now I need to think about design, not making the product, but how do I make the thing that's going to dispense the product? Did that for several years and then wanted a new challenge. So started to look at upfront innovation, as I like to call it. When I talked about that consumer need, there's a lot of ways you go test consumers and products with consumers. That's a science in of itself. Consumer behavior, it's one of those psychology sciences actually. And it's really fascinating how you have to ask questions and how you have to test things that is very different than you would in a lab. Right? A lab, it might be very straightforward, where with the consumers, you get very fuzzy answers like, I like the thickness of this product. Okay, well, what do they mean by thickness, right? Do they mean the measure of thickness, or do they mean how it feels in their hand? They usually mean how it feels in their hand, and then we have to figure out, well, how do I measure that, right? So started to really understand the upfront part of engineering and development, and then took on another challenge to actually become a manager. And so that's kind of my role now, is to really understand how can I effectively make teams have the processes around product development. And I experiment now a lot on the process of innovation. So I'm taking all that good knowledge I have about the scientific method and all my foundation in engineering to start redesigning how we do stuff, not just what are we creating, which is another step forward, which is really fun. So I've had quite the interesting path, very windy, as you may realize, but it has allowed me to do a lot of fun things. One of the couple interesting things I like to say is, engineering, science, those fields, they give you such a breadth of things you can do, right? You are not pigeonholed into one thing. That's one of the reasons why I liked engineering. I didn't want to just do something day in and day out. I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of explore and see what I might like. And that's what you really get to do with engineering and science fields, is you can go a lot of different ways. If you like the hands-on and being around the machine and manufacturing, you can go do that, right? And I did that for many, many years. Where you're greasy at the end of the day because maybe a motor failed and the grease is all over and you have to go figure out how to fix it, right? To what I get to do now is more lab work and prototyping things, right? And testing them and figuring out the best way to do things. And I always like to say, engineering will surprise you for sure. I don't think I could have come out of high school or college thinking this was going to be my career path. I think what it allows you to do is have fundamentals that you can apply along your journey. So a couple of key things, and I tell new hires this as well. We hire lots of engineers and scientists out of school every year. Georgia Pacific, just in our consumer goods, hires about 100 to 150 every year. But we're not hiring them to know exactly what we do, right? Nobody coming out of school knows how to make bath tissue. This is not a class they give you, right? Nobody comes out of school knowing our exact machinery. We have to teach that. But what do you come out of school knowing? A lot of really good things. You know how to problem solve, right? Engineering and science is all about the problem solving. You know the scientific method. I mean, many of you are probably taking chemistry, biology, physics classes in your high school studies. Guess what they're teaching you there, I still use today. I use the scientific method almost every day. What is our hypothesis? How are we going to test that? How are we going to measure it? What does the data tell us? What's that result? How am I going to draw that conclusion from that data and make a recommendation of what we should do next? We use it daily in our field, not only in R&D, other places, but most certainly R&D is one of the heavy users. You also learn how to critically think, right? How do I critically think through a problem? How do I come up with that logic behind it? And then shockingly, I think this is an answer most people don't really realize, but I really think if you're in STEM fields, you have a healthy amount of creativity. Yes, we all like good, straightforward answers, right? Like 1 + 1 is 2. But where it comes, the creativity is, well, how do I make 1 + 1 actually equal 3? Right? Our mathematicians would tell us that's not possible, but even in math, they stretch the boundaries every now and then and try to push it. And I think when you go into STEM fields, you're actually a very creative person and you're applying that creativity every day to what you're doing. It might be solving the problem at hand. It might be thinking of new problems to solve. It might be thinking of new ways to solve the same problem that's better, right? Cheaper, faster, higher quality. And I think it's that restless discontent that people in STEM fields have to really improve things for the future. And I've really found that to be true in my world. So the last thing I wanted to leave you guys with, Annika had asked me to think about, what advice would I have for individuals in high school who are thinking about going into STEM, right? If I was in your shoes, what would I want to hear? And I must say, I was someone who was very fortunate to know the world of engineering was probably where I was going to fall from a very early age. I was lucky to be inspired by NASA and the astronaut program. I'm not an astronaut. Have done nothing with NASA in my career, but that did inspire me, and that kind of set me off on my engineering path. Not everybody's as lucky, right? Some people, it takes a little bit longer to figure out where they're from. What I say is find what you're interested in, find what you're passionate about, right? And passion might be a very strong word for a lot of people, but if you're interested in it, if it's going to hold your attention, you are likely going to succeed in it. If you have passion for something, quite frankly, you're going to have good days and bad days no matter what you do in life. But if you're passionate about it, it lets you get through that and you will find fulfillment in what you do. So I say, look for the things in life that you're passionate about. Look for those things that you're interested and hold your interest. And don't feel like you have to be pigeonholed into one type of engineer is another thing. I joke, I'm a very different type of engineer. I am not detailed oriented. Again, I'm a mechanical engineer who doesn't like cars. I don't find the internal combustion engine all that fascinating. Yet I have a lot of mechanical engineering principles. I have foundation on it, and I've been able to leverage my skills in being able to organize things and communicate along with my sound technical principles to have a very successful career in engineering. So there's no one way to do it, right? There's lots of different paths, and you have to find your own path and be your own type of engineer or scientist or whatever you want to be. The other advice I have is be curious. Again, it's that creativity. I think people in STEM naturally have a lot of curiosity. I think you got to explore a lot of different things, try some things, experiment, not only with the thing in front of you, but experiment with yourself, right? Let me try this thing. That's an experiment. If it doesn't work, that's okay. You can go back or you can try something else. And I just encourage you throughout your career in high school and college and beyond, continue to be curious. I mean, you guys are obviously very curious people. The fact that you're attending these seminars, which is a great way to learn and see things. But if you can take that curiosity into your own plans, I think you'll find new opportunities and different opportunities for you in the future. So that's my spiel.
Thank you so much, Ms. Case. That was very informative. So if anyone has any questions for Ms. Case, you can put them in the meeting chat, or you can just unmute and ask.
Yep. And feel free to ask me about STEM careers, my personal journey, or even toilet paper if you want to know more about that.
All right, I had a question to start this off with, but for like any students who might want to learn more about product development or mechanical engineering, do you have any like resources or advice you would give them?
Yeah, so I mean, the nice thing I'll start with mechanical engineering. So the nice thing with mechanical engineering, it doesn't take much to start because it's all around you, right? So think about it as physics and the material objects kind of combined. So if you want to understand mechanical engineering, most certainly study physics, right? Newton's laws are a great place to start, but also just think about the simple things around you. How is that working, right? And the nice thing with mechanical engineering, you can usually see it, right? So I don't encourage you to take apart your parents' appliances or anything like that without permission. But if you can get permission, take something apart, see how it's working, see what the gears are doing, what the levers and the mechanisms are doing inside. And that's some of the best thing. Or if your parents won't let you take something apart at home, go to Goodwill and get something that's old and broken, right? And just see how it works. See if you can fix it. Some of that's the best way to really understand mechanical engineering. There are some good resources. So the Society of Mechanical Engineers, so ASME is a really good resource to understand things about mechanical engineering. And then most certainly if you're looking to go to college after high school for an engineering degree, just look at the college websites. You can see what some of the academic classes are, right? and try to dig into what those look like. What is dynamics? What is thermodynamics? What is fluids and heat transfer? Those are all some foundational classes for mechanical engineering beyond just physics. So I would look into that space, and then that's mechanical engineering in a nutshell. I would say the other part of that is product development. That is something that, quite frankly, I think anyone can do. I have a 10-year-old daughter who does product development all the time without even knowing it, right? And product development is really just a process of identifying a need in life, right? You probably have your own needs. I wish this wasn't so difficult to do this, or why do they make this thing so hard, right? Whenever you're having those moments, that's the start. That's the identifying the need. Then you think through creative ideas of how to solve that need, right? That's the brainstorming. And if I have this thing, how do I solve it? And then you try to experiment on it, right? You have to spend some time developing your best idea. And maybe your first best idea isn't the best idea, but you try the next idea and you develop it. Then you test it and validate it, right? Does my idea solve the problem better than the thing that is doing it today? And that's really the end. After you validate, we would, in product development, because we're a company, we would then launch it into the market. That same process, there's lots of different fancy words for it, but quite frankly, that's the process every product development company uses. That is the textbook process. So identify a need, ideate on a solution, develop that solution and experiment through it, validate that it does solve the problem, and then launch it. So not too dissimilar from the scientific method, but a little nuanced. I mean, I think you can find anything in your world and just practice it.
So I actually had a question on the toilet paper making process. And I know you said that there were 72 variables that influence the properties of it. And I was just kind of curious what some of these variables are and how they influence the properties of the toilet paper you make.
Yeah, that's really good. So toilet paper in general starts with a cellulosic fiber. So this is trees, essentially, right? And it might be a recycled fiber that maybe it was like copy paper or office paper that we're then taking, but the fiber itself always comes back to a tree. And so one of the first variables is, well, what kind of tree am I using, right? Different trees have different properties. So very unintuitively, what we like to say in the tissue world is hardwood trees make very soft product, and softwood trees make very strong product. So it is completely unintuitive, but it has to do with the length of the fiber itself at the molecular level. And so you start by asking yourself, well, what combination do I need, right? That's the first variable. What trees am I using? How much of each species? And we like to think of toilet paper and other paper making as building a recipe, right? What are my ingredients that are going into this? Just like you would build cookies, right? Flour, sugar, eggs. I'm going to have the same thing. I start with my fiber. I have some chemistry that goes into it, right? Chemistry does different things. I can either make it stronger in use when wet. I can maybe make it softer because I'm putting some softener, just like you would in your dryer or washer, I should say. So we put chemistries, and then the process is your steps to building it, right? So I have to dry this. I have to squish it down. I have to make a texture, right? I have to cut a sheet. That's the process that goes into it. So fiber and chemistry, and then some of the other processes in terms of our drying temperatures, how fast we're running the machine can actually affect the property of softness. Things we do called creping, which is essentially accordioning the sheet, squishing it at a very small level. Can also affect it. So lots of different fun properties, but it's just like baking a cookie. You've got ingredients and a stepped recipe to follow. Annika,
right.
did that answer your question good enough?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
All right. And then I received one question, and they wanted to know, what like the daily responsibilities of your job would be.
Yeah, that's a good question. I always have a hard time answering this because no one day looks like the next day. So people always ask, what's the day in the life of a product developer? Well, it really depends what's going on that day. So some examples of days we might have is you might have a day where you're brainstorming, right? And there's many different ways to do it. My personal favorite, I like to think out loud with people. So my personal favorite is very classic, get everybody together, get a team of creative people, and we start spitballing ideas, right? You write them on the board, maybe you sketch it out. So you might have a creative day where you're really trying to stretch your creative thinking and how might I solve this problem, right? Through various brainstorm methodologies. Other days you're trying to experiment, like very real, like you guys go into the lab in those chemistries and physics classes. We do the same thing. We have labs. So I'll go in and maybe I need to test a couple different chemistries and see if one chemistry gives me a stronger property on this sheet than a next. So I might do some lab testing with that and pipette literally some chemistry onto a sheet and test it, right? Sometimes we're building prototypes. I'm very fortunate in my facility, we have really good prototype facilities. So I have a couple paper machines that are very small that we can change all those 72 variables and mix and match them and see the limits of them. We also have 3D printers. So we might, if I'm working on the device team, I might prototype the device I've got in my head, sketch it out in CAD, throw it on the printer to see if it's doing what I want to do. A lot of times we're bench testing things, right? So if I messed with those 72 variables, maybe one day I need to go take that into the lab and test, did it give me the softness I want? Maybe I'm measuring the surface friction. Or maybe I'm actually getting people in the room and having them measure it with their hands. Some days in product development, most product development, you will eventually go out into the manufacturing facility to scale it up and launch it. So a lot of times we'll go to our manufacturing facilities and run trials on the full scale machines and do that. And then there most certainly is the desk work, right? You got all this data, you got to crunch your data and you got to analyze it and then create a report and communicate that out. So it really depends what you're doing. Every day is a little different. Some days it's a combination of a couple different things, but those are some of the big things we do.
That's really cool. All right, so I have one final question, and it is, what are some job fields that you can do with mechanical engineering degree?
Yeah, so there's lots of things you can do with a mechanical engineering degree. It is part of one of the reasons I love that particular degree is it's really broad in its application. Most certainly you can work in R&D, right? So you can work in research and development facilities across the country who have, as long as they have mechanical properties to what they're testing and designing, you can work there. You can also most certainly work in manufacturing. Manufacturing is a strong draw from mechanical engineering degrees across the board. So it doesn't have to be just paper, right? Any type of manufacturing plant will use some kind of mechanical engineers because getting equipment to run, keeping it running, trying to make it run better usually involves that field. You can also go into design. Right. So there was a period of time where I was actually a designer when I was on the device team. So this is where maybe you're doing 3-dimensional CAD drawings and trying to see a product, right? So you might go into the design field. And then most certainly you can go into other things like project management is another avenue a lot of mechanical engineers go down. Management itself, it allows you to be a leader. If that's something you strive for and you want to go that route, mechanical engineering is not a bad springboard for leadership as long as you have the technical foundation for what you're trying to do.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you for being a speaker today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my experience with you all.
So I think we'll move on to our next guest speaker now. Thank you so much, Ms. Case. So our next speaker is Dr. Minmin Wang. Dr. Minmin Wang is a scientist and entrepreneur with a strong tie to Atlanta. After getting her PhD in medicinal and computational chemistry, she came to Emory in 1998 for postdoctoral research. She joined Eli Lilly and Company, a global pharmaceutical company in Indianapolis, in 2000. During her 20-year tenure there, Dr. Wang worked across multiple functions in the big pharma, including research and development of innovative medicines, corporate strategy, and project management. She was also a founding member of the Lilly China R&D Center in Shanghai. Dr. Wang co-founded a startup in drug discovery in 2020 with business operations in both China and the US. At the end of 2021, Dr. Wang joined Beijing as Chief Scientific Officer of Beijing Innovation Center. In her current capacity, Dr. Wang helps researchers and entrepreneurs around the world to develop their brilliant ideas into biotech companies. She's committed to coaching and mentoring young scientists and high school students to build future talents for science and medical research. She is also an active member of the American Chemical Society. Let us welcome Dr. Wang.
Thank you, Anika, for the very nice introduction, and I really appreciate you to provide me this opportunity to share my experience and hopefully provide opportunities for this group to learn more about what a career could potentially be in science, in particular in like chemistry, biology, and the related field. So I'll probably share my screen as I putting together a few slides to, oh, looks like the sharing is disabled. Will you be able to share?
Sorry, I enabled it now.
Okay. Okay. I'll probably start. You guys can see, right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'll probably start as my personal journey through the past probably 20-ish years. So my hometown actually is in South China. If you spin the globe 180 degrees from Atlanta, you'll probably get to my hometown in South China. It's called Wenzhou. I was there until 1988, and then I went to Beijing for my undergraduate and graduate research, and I took chemistry as my major. And my graduate school major actually was computational chemistry and medicinal chemistry, which is making compounds, using organic synthesis to make compounds and evaluate those molecules for their biological activities. After I finished my graduate school work and I came to Atlanta to do my postdoctoral research in the chemistry building, not too far from you guys currently. So I stayed for 2 years there and joined Lilly afterwards and moved to Indianapolis. And I spent 20 years at Indianapolis and working across different roles in research, in development, and in corporate strategy, including in between, I have been in Shanghai for 6 years, from 2009 to 2015, building up a research center in Shanghai, trying to expand Lilly's research into China and also leverage the global talent to find solutions, medical solutions for unmet needs. As diseases, they all have some ethnic and regional differences. Then at the end of 2020, I start my career. I moved out of a corporate research, corporate environment, and started a biotech company with my ex-colleagues at Lilly. And most recently, I joined Beijing as a CSO for the Beijing Innovation Center in Guangzhou, which is another coastal city very close to Hong Kong and Macau. So there now I work with entrepreneurs and the researchers globally, helping them, taking their ideas and leveraging my experience in industry and helping them develop the prototype, as Ms. Case mentioned. So take an idea, build up hypothesis, test a hypothesis in the lab, which is on the background of my Zoom, and which we were able to say, this is a good idea, you can continue to develop, or this is really not viable, we probably should shut it down. So through that hypothesis testing period, now we are able to start up new companies, which will have a much more viable and sustainable pipeline, and hopefully in the longer term, also helping them score much better investment opportunities and become a much stronger company as they move out of incubation center in Guangzhou. So that's my current role. So one of the opportunities from my personal career, I can see the advantage working in the pharmaceutical industry is really its mobility. If especially you work for multinational companies like Lilly, so we have over 170 affiliates across globally. So I was lucky, was able to work for a few affiliates Lilly had. And even now when I work for Beijing, so Beijing is a much smaller company compared to Lilly, but Beijing does operate in 45 countries, geographies. So you still have a global coverage, and you meet and you work with colleagues across the globe, and you really be able to learn and understand the needs of different patients, different people from different groups. And now I think when people think about the pharmaceutical industry and the drug discovery, you're probably trying to understand, so how you even get a drug, right? I think you actually don't have to be a scientist if you want to find a job in a pharmaceutical organization. Now this funnel shows how the process looks like. It's always start with a lot of molecules. The molecule could be here. You started with 10,000 molecules. That's during the discovery stage. So at that stage, we make those compounds, synthetic organic chemists or biochemists, they will make those compounds and have them tested. And through this testing process, and you gradually now select about a fourth of those molecules that probably worthwhile having the potencies or the properties that you like, you want to continue to move forward. And this filtering process not only takes a chemist to make the compound, it takes a biologist to evaluate this compound, and you take some computational scientists to help building models, to help evaluate them faster or smarter. It takes statisticians help set up the boundaries. What is a statistically meaningful difference between two molecules, so that you only advance the molecule that is significantly better, not marginally better than the other one. And we also take a toxicologist to understand these properties of the molecule. They have to be efficacious to treat the disease. But at the same time, they also have to be very safe, because as patient, number one, we want to, when we take the medicine, we want the medicine to cure us. At the same time, we don't want them to do additional harm to our body. Through this process, we probably select a few molecules. Now, this is a very high attrition from 250 to 5, which can be lucky ones survive through this process after all those biologies or toxicology evaluation. Eventually, for these very few molecules move through the clinical development, which we mean is to now really taking these molecules from animal to human. So we need to evaluate these molecules very carefully in a controlled clinical setting in a medical facility, have them carefully monitored and evaluated for their efficacy. Can they cure the disease? Can they provide a benefit? Do they do additional harm? And these molecules have to went through very thorough evaluation. We call them clinical trials. So there's 3 phases, clinical trials, to evaluate the safety, the effectiveness, and eventually we want this drug to be benefit. So the very important thing we have to answer at the end of the day is the benefit to risk. It's cost effective for the society, for the patient. The lucky ones went through all this process, then will be submitted to the regulatory agencies across the globe. So each agency will have their own criteria, whether they approve or not approve that particular molecule based on the clinical trial result as a drug that can be used clinically to a much broader patient population in that particular country or geography. So as you can see, this is a very long journey. A typical molecule from the start of the funnel to the end takes 7 to 10 years. Lots of people working through this process, lots of different skill set is needed. However, in the discovery stage, there's some technicians which probably at the bachelor's degree, a lot of them requires advanced degrees like masters or PhDs across chemistry, biology, physics, computational, statistics. But once you move into a clinical development stage, the skill set is slightly different because now these molecules is moving to clinic. So we really need people with clinicians, physicians, nurses, who's able to work directly with a patient and their caregivers to evaluate the effectiveness of this drug and the safety of these drug molecules. And you have medical writers whose probably major is more related to humanity rather than the STEM. So you need to write consent, agree forms, consent forms to the patient so that they know what they will be going through during the clinical trials. And we need people like engineers, we need statisticians, we need data scientists to analyze the data for the significance. They need to be statistically significant, but they also need to be clinically meaningful. And when we move to the regulatory approvals, now you're not only needing people who's clinicians, but also you need people who's more connected to the marketing and the sales. So these are the people who's able to understand each country's unique insurance systems, payer systems, and how to get this drug approved, how to deliver the drug to the patient. So through, like, if you see a drug in the CVS, how can you move the drug from a pharmaceutical company to the pharmacy so that at the end of the day, us as a consumer, we go to the pharmacy, we can be dispensed with that product. So this whole process, it takes all kinds of disciplines, people working together. And I think one thing is very true, as Ms. Case mentioned before. So all different skills are needed. The foundation is your scientific method, your curiosity, your passion, your love of what you do. And this is actually the starting point for how you can get a job in the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of them, we don't teach at school, regardless how advanced you take your degree. You get your training from the job. However, you have to have the foundational understanding of science and STEM. Here I put together a typical day of a chemist, since my background is a chemist. So again, you probably will hear the similar themes that Ms. Case mentioned. You probably, when at the beginning of the day, you start what's a reaction in the hood. Then once you set up your reaction, then you start going to a team meeting. You need to discuss data. As a discovery scientist, probably every day you have a piece of new information coming from other team members. So the team wants to discuss the data, and based on this data, you want to set up a plan for what you're going to do next. And then you will probably check what you already set up after the meeting or probably a few hours later, but then you will find your team members or you find some quiet time for you to think through what had happened in your reaction or what had happened, what kind of data you get from previous day. And usually now by the lunchtime, this is another great opportunity. I think this is not necessarily unique for the pharmaceutical, but I think this is something probably good for everyone to start doing, even if you are in high school, is to really taking the lunch break as your opportunity to network. So at high school, you probably network with your friends and others to learn what's happening in their life. The same thing goes in the industry. So at lunchtime, you know what's going on in your friends or colleagues' life and what's happening in their lab and what's happening in their field. And that really helps you to expand your view. A typical day will end with you probably need to take your write your lab notebook, and you really need to think, do a big plan. So planning is a big thing in my field, and everything starts with a planning. So you need to think what you want to do tomorrow, next week, what's your next milestones. So everyone, in addition to be a scientist, you are your own, a mini project manager. And then a team has a project manager, you are your own project manager so that you can stay on track. And oftentimes nowadays, since we are such a globalized industry, so oftentimes you will see people do teleconference during the nighttime, or for Asia colleagues, they will probably do teleconference during their nighttime, which will be the daytime for the US. So now the industry is very globalized with different parts across different geography. You have people working in Asia, you have people working in Europe, you have people working in South America. So, and we are on the calls all the time because of the high demanding of the job. So probably being energetic, stay healthy, that's very important. So one common thing I think you probably hear a lot today is collaboration, teamwork. But on top of that, you want to remember doing science is a hard work. So you do need to have a very healthy mind and a healthy body in order to sustain the high demanding work. And finally, I think I want to probably put out my final kind of my own personal reflection. There's a really lot of career opportunities in biomedical research, regardless what kind of disciplines you may take. But it's a very meaningful career because your work is going to change someone's life. You are going to make someone's quality life better. So that's what keeps me working day and night. And finally, I'll probably share a few pictures of my current colleagues at the Beijing Innovation Center. So as you can see through these pictures, we do have a very nice cafeteria and we eat together every day. And we have celebrations. And we have all kinds of different celebration events. We celebrate holidays. We have seminars with external speakers. We learn from others just like what we do. And we do experiments. So we work, we play, we have fun. So that's I want to share with you today and I look forward to answer your questions.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation. So now we'll move into the Q&A section. So if anyone has any questions, please leave them in the chat for Dr. Wang to answer or unmute and ask them.
A lot of us are students in high school. So like as students, what is like the best way to explore these sciences and like prepare for
There are actually a few opportunities like Lily, so where I was before. So Lily actually has an open day. I think in Georgia, in particular in Atlanta area, there's a few pharmaceutical companies. You can definitely explore these corporations to see if they have an open day that allow a high school student to go a visit. You can shadow. So if you visit like Indianapolis, there's a Lilly, right? Chicago have a AbbVie. In the East Coast, there's a much more companies. Usually the large companies, there will be allow a tour. There's a shadow day. If you have colleagues, you can like ask friends, parents of friends, or someone they know to introduce you. There's a shadow opportunities. At Lilly, we also have bring your kids to work day. So elementary school, middle school, high school, everyone can be bring to work. So you can shadow. And Lilly actually also a high school student program. We called it a SEED program. I don't know it allows out of state student to apply, but that's for high school student to apply as an afternoon, like you throughout the school year, the shadow someone in the office, in the lab, you doing some support work, but also allow you to learn hands-on how work in pharmaceutical industry looks like.
One question I had was, what is the typical timeline for developing a certain compound? Like, how long does each stage typically take?
For the discovery stage, it typically takes like somewhere 3 to 5 years, average around 4 years. Then the development, so the development stage, the preclinical safety typically take a year because we really want to thoroughly evaluate the molecule's safety before we put into human. And then it moved to human. The clinical development usually takes another 5 to 7 years. So, so that from start of a project to the end, it's really a very, very long product development timeline, and it's very expensive.
Okay, and I have a question as well. So for someone with medicinal and computational chemistry degree, what are some other jobs they might take up if not like drug development itself?
I think nowadays it's a popular career option is actually investment. So with the booming of biotech industry, a lot of investment firms, they will take someone with STEM background, like PhD in biology, PhD in chemistry, PhD in physics, PhD in computer sciences, to help them evaluate ideas as they're making the investment decision. So that's probably a very unusual career path. 10, 15 years ago, it became a more popular career path in the recent years.
Okay, and I got a question. What quality do you find is the most important for your career success?
I think definitely ability to collaborate with people, work with people, and be a good listener. So pharmaceutical industry, it's a very long journey. It's very difficult for one work. So if you are able to work with people, and that's, I think, the key for the success. And also definitely you need to be very open-minded and always willing to challenge the status quo, because if you're taking everything as is for granted, then you miss opportunity. So you have to be able to ask why. So why you see this? is this really what's happening? So can it be different? And that's the ability seeking for truth finding is really leading to new discovery, which eventually create the breakthrough medicine for patients.
Thank you. I think that will be our final question. And thank you to all the attendees for the great questions. And thank you to Dr. Wang for presenting and being our guest speaker.
Thank you, and wish you guys good luck in your seminar as well as future career endeavors.
And
Okay,
as
so
a-
thank you so, sorry, no, go ahead, Delia.
And as a last call, if you have not already, we would appreciate it if you would be able to fill out our survey so we can have feedback on how to improve our surveys in the future. And of course, thank you to everyone for attending and have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.